The words landed like a blade across the table. "You're not even half the woman my mother is." I froze, the serving spoon still in my hand, the smell of vanilla pudding drifting through the room I had tried so hard to make warm and welcoming. The crystal glasses glimmered under the light, the silverware polished to a shine. I had hoped for peace that night. Instead, silence pressed down on every corner of my dining room. Kendra sat across from me, her red dress glowing like a warning. Her eyes glittered with satisfaction, as if she had waited for the perfect moment to strike. My son, Daniel, avoided my gaze, his fingers tapping nervously against his phone. I pushed back my chair. My heart pounded, but my voice was steady. "Then your mother can start paying your rent." Daniel's head snapped up, his face drained of color. "Rent," he shouted, the word breaking the silence like glass shattering on the floor. That single moment would change everything. "My name is Hazel Carter. I am 70 years old." And this was the night I stopped being invisible. "My name is Hazel Carter, and I have lived in the same small town in Ohio for more than 3 decades. I am a widow, a retired seamstress, and a mother who spent most of her life putting others first. My hands carried the proof calloused from years of sewing dresses, hemming pants, and patching coats for neighbors who sometimes paid me in dollars and sometimes only in gratitude. This house, the one that now feels like a stage for conflict, holds 30 years of my history. Every corner carries a story. The rocking chair in the living room still creaks with the weight of nights I stayed awake nursing Daniel's fevers. The quilt folded on the sofa is stitched from scraps of fabric left over from customers' gowns, each square a memory of work I poured myself into. For years I believed that helping my family was the same as loving them. What I didn't know was that sometimes help can erase you piece by piece, until you no longer recognize yourself. 6 months before that dinner, Daniel showed up at my front door. His eyes were red, his voice cracked as he spoke. "Mom, I lost my job. We can't pay the rent. Please, it'll only be for a few months until I find something." A mother's heart does not think twice. I opened my savings account, the money I had gathered penny by penny through years of sewing and sacrifice, and I began paying their rent, $900 each month, plus $100 more for the landlord's fee to process the transfer. $1,000 drained from my account on the 5th day of every month. "Don't tell Kendra," Daniel pleaded. "She'll feel ashamed depending on you." I believed him. I thought I was protecting her pride, when really he was protecting his own. To keep that payment steady, I cut corners everywhere. Dinner became rice and eggs night after night. I stretched my arthritis medicine until the pain kept me awake. I wore the same worn-out shoes until the soles split. And still I told myself it was worth it because my son needed me. Meanwhile, Daniel and Kendra went out to dinners, bought new clothes, and posted photos of weekend trips I knew they could not afford. I carried their burden quietly, believing that someday they would see my sacrifice and be grateful. That evening I wanted everything to be perfect. I cooked Daniel's favorite meal, chicken and mushroom sauce, rice with vegetables, and the vanilla pudding he had loved since he was a boy. I set the table with my mother's crystal glasses and the silver cutlery I only used on special occasions. Kendra arrived in a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile I had learned to recognize over the years, the one she wore when she was about to deliver criticism. Daniel seemed restless from the moment he walked in, avoiding my eyes and fidgeting with his phone like it held the answers to every question he didn't want to face. As we ate, Kendra began her routine. "The food's a little cold. Don't you think it's time to update this place? My mom's house feels so modern, she knows all the latest styles." I kept my smile soft, trying to keep the peace. This house was not modern, but every corner held a memory, every item a story of my life's work. I wanted us to end the night with dessert and laughter. I wanted one peaceful meal, but I could already feel the storm building around the table. Dessert was meant to soften the evening. I carried the vanilla pudding to the table, remembering how Daniel used to scrape the bowl clean as a child, telling me I was the best cook in the world. For a moment I thought we might finish the night gently. Then Kendra leaned back, her fork resting on the plate, and spoke the words that sliced the room in two. "You're not even half the woman my mother is." The spoon froze in my hand. The clock ticked loudly in the kitchen, each second puncturing the silence. Daniel kept his eyes down, his shoulders tense. I placed the spoon carefully on the table and rose slowly. My voice was calm, but it carried a weight I had not felt in years. Then your mother can start paying your rent at 406 Briar Lane, Unit 3. Daniel's head snapped up, his glass tipped, water spilling across the table. What rent? He stammered, his face drained of color. The rent I've been covering since February, I said evenly. $900 each month, plus the $100 fee for the landlord's deposit. $1,000 paid faithfully so the two of you could live comfortably. Kendra's smile collapsed, her painted confidence cracked into confusion. Daniel sat speechless, his jaw slack. For the first time in months, the truth was mine to hold, and I was no longer afraid to speak it. The silence after my words was heavy enough to crush the air from the room. Daniel blinked rapidly, as if he could undo the truth by refusing to accept it. Finally, his voice broke through. Mom, I was going to tell you, I was fired 2 weeks ago. The confession hit like a hammer. Fired. And yet he had let his wife walk into my house in a designer dress and treat me like I was beneath her. Kendra turned to him, eyes blazing. You lost your job and didn't tell me. Her voice rose to a sharp pitch. I spent $400 on shoes last week. I'd booked the spa for my birthday, and you let me do it while we're broke? Daniel ran his hands through his hair, the same nervous habit he had since childhood. I thought I could fix it before you noticed. I didn't want to disappoint you. I stared at them both, the picture of arrogance meeting the reality of ruin. My chest ached, not from pity, but from anger so old it felt new again. Shoes and spa treatments, I said slowly, while I sold your father's wedding ring to cover your rent. The room fell silent again. This time it was not confusion that lingered, it was shame. I stood tall, feeling an unfamiliar steadiness rise within me. For years I had bent, softened, compromised, but in that moment I was done bending. Daniel, Kendra, I said firmly, your lease is up in 30 days. After that, I will no longer pay a single cent for your apartment. Daniel's mouth fell open. Mom, you can't do that, we'll have nowhere to go. You should have thought of that before you lied to me, I replied. My voice was not cruel, it was clear. Kendra slammed her hand against the table. Mothers don't abandon their children. My mother would never do this to me. I looked her straight in the eyes. I am not abandoning my son. I am refusing to be used. There is a difference. Daniel's eyes welled with tears. Please, Mom, just one more chance, I'll get a job. I'll make it right. I shook my head gently. Promises don't pay rent, Daniel. Actions do. If you want to prove yourself, start now. But I will no longer be the safety net that lets you avoid responsibility. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of their expectations sliding off my shoulders. This wasn't revenge. This was survival. This was me choosing to respect myself. When the door finally closed behind them, the house was quiet in a way I had not heard in years. No sharp words, no nervous tapping, only the hum of the refrigerator and the steady tick of the wall clock. I stood at the sink, rinsing dishes beneath warm water, watching the soap bubbles swirl and pop. My hands trembled, not from weakness, but from the release of everything I had carried alone. That night, I sat in my rocking chair, the one that had seen me through nights of fevers and storms, and listened to the creak of the wood. For the first time in months, I did not feel dread pressing on my chest. When sleep came, it was deep and uninterrupted. I dreamed of nothing and everything at once, freedom, peace, and the strange calm of knowing a line had been drawn. By morning, the sunlight spilled across the dining table where the fight had taken place. It was the same room, the same furniture, the same walls, yet it felt different, lighter, as if the house itself had taken a breath. 2 days later, the phone rang just after sunset. I almost didn't answer. I had grown tired of bad news, but something in me said to pick it up. Hazel? It's Tom Carson? The name pulled me back 50 years in an instant. Tom, my college sweetheart. The boy with a crooked smile who once promised to take me to see the Pacific Ocean. We had lost touch when he moved west to chase opportunities, and I stayed behind to build a family. His voice was older now, deeper, but it carried the same warmth I remembered. He told me he had spent the last 4 decades building an engineering company in Seattle. He raised 3 children. His wife had passed 2 years ago, and recently, while going through old photographs, he had found one of me, the girl in a white dress with red flowers I had sewn myself. I wondered if you were still in Ohio, he said softly. I wanted to hear your voice again. We spoke for hours that night, sharing pieces of our lives, our losses, our small victories. Before we hung up, Tom paused. Hazel, I'd like to invite you to spend a month in Seattle. No expectations, just old friends catching up. You deserve an extraordinary life and I'd be honored to show you a bit of mine. I sat holding the phone long after the call ended, my heart pounding in a way I hadn't felt in years. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Tom's invitation circling in my mind. A month in Seattle. The Pacific Ocean. The kind of adventure I used to dream about before life grew heavy with duty. But I am 70 years old, I reminded myself. What if this was foolish? What if Tom was not the boy I remembered, but someone who only wanted to take advantage of me? I wrote a list in my notebook. On one side, the risks, scams, nostalgia clouding judgment, disappointment. On the other side, the safeguards, video calls to confirm his life, meeting his family, paying for my own ticket so I owed him nothing, keeping my finances separate. I asked myself the hardest question, was I thinking about going to punish Daniel and Kendra? Or was I thinking about going because of me? The truth settled quietly in my chest. For the first time in decades, the decision wasn't about anyone else's comfort. It was about mine. I closed the notebook and whispered into the dark, I'm not running away. I'm choosing myself. The thought was terrifying. It was also exhilarating. After years of sacrificing for others, I had just given myself permission to consider my own happiness. A week later, Daniel showed up at my door. His clothes were wrinkled, his face gaunt, and the circles under his eyes told me he hadn't slept much. For a moment I almost saw the little boy he once was, standing at the door after scraping his knee. "Mom," he said quietly, "can we talk?" We sat at the kitchen table. He wrapped his hands around a cup of coffee like he needed it to steady himself. "I've been sleeping in my car," he admitted. 3 nights now. I finally found night work with a cleaning company. It's not much, but it pays enough for a room downtown, and I signed up for online classes basic accounting certification. I want to do better. I studied his face. For once, he didn't look defensive. He looked humble. I also started therapy at the community center, he added. Free sessions. The counselor told me something that shook me. He said I've been addicted to being rescued my whole life. Every time someone bailed me out, it felt like relief, like a drug. And I never learned to stand on my own. He lifted his eyes to mine. I'm not here to ask for money. I'm here to tell you I'm trying. And I'll keep trying, even if it takes years for you to believe me. For the first time in a long while, I felt hope flicker. Fragile but real. The following week, I stood in my bedroom with an open suitcase on the bed. For years, my life had revolved around paying bills, mending clothes, and surviving one month to the next. Now I was packing dresses, one coral pink I had sewn just for myself, for a journey I never imagined I would take. Daniel drove me to the airport. The car ride was quiet, not heavy with resentment, but with something softer. Acceptance, maybe. When we reached the terminal, he pulled a small bouquet of daisies from the back seat, my favorite flowers since I was a girl. "Mom," he said, handing me an envelope, "don't open this until you're on the plane. It's easier for me to write than to speak." We hugged longer than we had in years. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too, son," I said, my voice steady. Now it's time for both of us to stand on our own 2 feet. On the plane, as clouds spread out like an endless field below me, I opened his letter. In shaky handwriting, Daniel had written, "Fly high, Mom, you've earned it." For the first time in decades, I felt the sky was mine. Seattle greeted me with cool air that smelled faintly of salt and pine. At the arrival's gate, Tom stood waiting, a bouquet of yellow roses in his hands. His hair was white now, his face lined, but his smile was the same one that once made my heart race in college. "Hazel," he said when we embraced, "you're even more beautiful than I remembered." The days that followed were unlike anything I'd lived in years. Tom drove me to the Pacific coast. I stood barefoot in the sand, watching waves crash endlessly, and whispered to myself I made it. At dinner on his deck, with the sun sinking into the horizon, he cooked salmon and poured me wine. His children came by later in the week, greeting me with warmth I hadn't expected. His youngest daughter, Claire, hugged me tightly and said, "Dad hasn't smiled this much since Mom passed. Thank you for bringing back his light." Every evening we talked for hours about our regrets, our victories, our silly youthful dreams. For once I wasn't someone's mother or caretaker. I was Hazel, a woman with stories to tell, laughter to share, and a heart still open to love. Healing didn't come all at once, but each conversation, each sunset, stitched me back together in ways I hadn't thought possible. One evening, after a month of shared dinners and quiet mornings, Tom sat across from me on the deck. The sky was streaked with orange and purple, and gulls circled lazily over the water. He reached for my hand, his eyes steady and kind. "Hazel," he said, "I know this might sound sudden. I'm not asking for marriage right away. I'm asking for a chance for us. Move to Seattle, let's see what we can build at this stage of our lives." My first instinct was fear, my home, my few friends, the life I had clung to for decades. But then I thought of Daniel's letter. "Fly high, Mom." I thought of all the years I'd spent giving, sacrificing, shrinking myself. And I realized that saying yes wasn't reckless. It was brave. A month later, I stood in my old house packing the last of my belongings. Daniel helped, calmer now, his shoulders straighter. "Funny," he said with a smile, "by letting you go, I finally feel like I've really got you back. Not the mother who rescued me, but the woman I never knew well enough." At 70 years old, I was not closing a chapter, I was opening one. And this time, the story was mine to write. Looking back now from the porch of Tom's house that overlooks the Pacific, I realize something I wish I had learned sooner. It is never too late to choose yourself. Daniel is rebuilding his life. He works steadily, pays his bills, and even started dating a woman who encourages him instead of enabling him. He still calls me every week, but not to ask for help, to share his progress. And for the first time in years, I feel proud of the man he is becoming. As for Kendra, she married a man older than herself who could fund the lifestyle she craved. I no longer feel bitterness when I think of her. Some people never change, and that's their journey, not mine. What I carry with me is this lesson: unconditional love is powerful, but without boundaries, it becomes a trap. Being a mother doesn't mean becoming invisible. It means raising children to stand, even if it means watching them stumble first. To anyone listening, maybe you've sacrificed too much. Maybe you've been told you're less than you are. Hear me, you are not too old, too late, or too small to start again. I was 70 when I boarded that plane. 70 when I opened my heart to joy. 70 when I learned that happiness is not a gift others give us, it's a choice we must finally give ourselves. And if I could do it, so can you.